How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, should you wish to be on the program, 877-973-7425. If you text ARMY, A-R-M-Y, to 33777, you can put in your contact info. As we travel around the country, we will be able to email to say, hey, we're going to be in this location, come join us, or there's an action alert for you to call members of Congress, things like that, for you to be able to do stuff like that. Would love for you to be able to do that. I am on the fly, going to change stuff around. I will get to the Senate. I will get to your phone calls, but I just occasionally get stuff stuck in my head, and I got to get it out of my head with you guys before I can move on. And so I'm going to pivot, and I want to talk about this instead.
Jules, this is Ryan. Lives on an airplane that's been hijacked. If things don't go well, it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So have a good time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you. And I'll see you later. Bye, babe. Hope I call you.
That was Brian David Sweeney. The last message to his wife, Julie. Today, of course, always get emotional. Today is September 11th, and we're talking about a debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And so many years later, you don't know when to stop. At what point do you stop? You know, the British are more than 100 years removed from World War I, and still every year on Remembrance Day there, they lay a wreath at the Centenario. Everyone wears the poppies. They still remember. It was a fundamentally, profoundly changing moment for them in ways people don't seem to appreciate or understand. By the time World War I ended, there were entire villages in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland that no longer existed. All the men had gone off to war and been killed, and the wives and children packed up and left. We are well beyond 100 years removed from the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of the year World War I ended, and the British still commemorate it because it profoundly changed the lives of the people of that country. It upended the aristocracy. The foot soldier came back and became a made man, and he wasn't going to respect the inherited wealth lord or lady because he had actually fought, nearly died, came back and made something of himself. It was a profoundly upending moment in society for the British. The Civil War was that moment for us for a very long time. Even into the 1900s, there's video of this in the 1900s of the Confederate and Union soldiers meeting at Gettysburg, running across the field as very old men and hugging each other. People who were once divided were reunited, and that's something that I think in this age of the wokes and political and historic revisionism, people quite don't understand or appreciate. what happened after that war, and we challenge ourselves on whether or not the United States is a good nation. And we're doing that now, I think, with some of the white nationalists, Christian nationalists, and revision on the right, the conversation about Winston Churchill. Is the United States a profoundly good nation? And a lot of those conversations are being asked, and a lot of the social fallout is coming because of what happened on September 11th, 2001, and the aftermath, where this country that had not really been attacked since the British burned the Capitol in 1812, we've been protected by seas. Evil men flew planes into towers of the Pentagon and a field in Pennsylvania. And it overwhelmed us. And in some degree, it broke the nation psychologically. I think about my kids.
You hold up this hope,
Sorry, that's rest of that video fired up and decided to play for some reason. I think about my kids. My kids were born in 2005, our oldest. She has no appreciation for it and wonders why her parents oftentimes still get emotional talking about something that happened 23 years ago when she wasn't born and can't appreciate it. She has no appreciation for the world before. I mean, I think about Philip, who was in the other room in the office today, who was a kid when 9/11 happened. He was 11 years old, I guess, roughly. He doesn't really appreciate the world that was before. All you have to do is go to an airport and you will see a world that did not exist before September 11th, 2001. When I was growing up, we would leave at the end of every summer. We'd come home in the summer. We'd head back to Dubai. At the end of the summer, our whole family would go to the airport with us and sit at the gate with us and wait for us to leave. You can't do that anymore. You can't go through security unless you got a ticket. You could take your toiletries on the plane with you, and they didn't have to be in a Ziploc bag. You didn't have to take off your shoes. You didn't have to take off your belt. There was no TSA pre-check. Everything moved. People had faith in their government. The government was never fully competent, but it was never as incompetent or overwhelmed or overburdened as it seems now. And it did not seem in every election that the world would end if our side lost. The existential dread and terror for every election and every interaction with government, all of that crept in after 9/11 because the American people felt vulnerable, and we never had a national psychology, never had a therapist to sit the whole nation down on a couch and deal with it. Everybody dealt with it in their own way. And the trauma passed down generationally as Americans, roughly 3,000 died, and the rest watched it all live on television. Trying to explain to my kids that in the days that followed, there was no TV. There was coverage. You turn on Nickelodeon, turn on MTV, turn on the Food Network. It was wall-to-wall coverage for about 5 days before the cable network started going back to their in-house original programming. And then there was war. And a lot more Americans killed. And a lot of bad guys killed. And then shamefully, trying to get it done by September 11th of 2021 for the 20th anniversary, the arrogance and incompetence of the President of the United States handed Afghanistan back to the Taliban, who have gone back to plotting our demise. This time with all the American weaponry we left behind. That right there by the way, should be a partisan attack from Donald Trump. But he wasn't even capable of making it on stage last night when given multiple opportunities to. It was notable there was no conversation about 9/11 on that debate stage last night. One of the things that should have come from 9/11 and did was this massive return to church. You know, Tim Keller started Redeemer in New York well before 9/11, and it was a struggling small church. And on 9/11, the crowds began to swell. People wanted the gospel. They wanted the truth, and he gave them the truth, and he fed their souls. One of the things I think that has fallen away from then is one, particularly with COVID, people pulled back out of the churches that they had gone into after September 11th, and many of them aren't going to come back. But also this festering sense of isolation. You're dealing still, these 20 years later, 19 years later, with the struggles and dealing with the terror and dread from 9/11. You wonder now, is something bad going to happen? We hear the reports of the people coming across the border, the gotaways, the illegals, the people with terrorist ties, and you've isolated yourself. You've surrounded yourself with just the media that tells you what you want to hear. You don't know your neighbor down the street. They look like a stranger to you. People aren't plugged into their communities. After 9/11, a lot of people got plugged into their communities, and then they started falling away again. And then after COVID, it just escalated. Wave after wave after wave of trauma. In the old days, everybody sucks it up. Not these days. Americans are very emotional, and they've never really dealt with it. And now everybody lives in constant existential dread of what's going to happen next. Is the country going to come to an end? No, it's not. You're going to be fine. We lost a lot of Americans that day. A lot of people saw it live on television. For a moment, for a brief moment, the nation was unified. But in the crass politics of the United States, we couldn't stay unified because that would help the people in power, and the people out of power needed to sow division as best they could to try to get into power. And it didn't quite work well for them for a time. And then the politicians learned that instead of giving us something to vote for, they could give us a party to vote against. So instead of selling us a positive vision of the future, they wanted to sell us a negative vision of the other side. And too many people on too many sides were willing to buy into it and hate their neighbor instead of love their neighbor. We're still feeling the effects of the day our world changed. So yeah, more than 100 years after World War I, the British still remember the fallout of World War I. And they commemorate it every year in ceremony with the royal family leading the nation in a moment of silence. Because World War I profoundly upended that society. So yeah, I think it's important for us to stop as well on September 11th of every year, as long as we're capable, to remember what happened. Because just like World War I was for Britain, 9/11 was for us. Profoundly upended American society. We will not be the same as we were before 9/11. It's not just in the small ways like the airport. It's in the psychological ways in which we deal with the world around us. And yeah, I'll say this in closing as well. It's why I rest my head at night on the sovereignty of God. Because through him all things are possible, by him all things are done, and with him will be spared the world to come. All things work for the good of those called according to his purpose, even if we can't see what the good is at the time. But we can trust that he has a plan, because I see the plans of man, and they involve running planes into buildings and starting a war, and that's not God, that's the absence of God. But with him, we know the best days are still ahead.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested, so buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today. All right, some debate reaction from you guys. 877-973-7425. Jim calling from Oklahoma. Welcome to the show. Jim, how are you?
I'm fine, Eric. Thank you. I appreciate your show.
Thank you.
You know, I think that the President Trump, missed a lot of opportunities. For example, Kamala Harris talks about she's for the people. Well, which people is she for? The criminals who she bails out? The abused people by the clergy who she never, ever helped in San Francisco? Is she for the business owners who had their businesses destroyed in Minneapolis and other places? No, she's not. She's not for citizens' rights. She's for non-citizens' rights. She wants people to have equal opportunity and equal outcome. Yet she is opposed to having children be in charter schools. She's she's just part of the teachers union.
Well, Jim, you mentioned something there that I really do think that Republicans need to harp on, because it's Kamala Harris, her own words, is that she does want us all to have equal outcome, not equal opportunity. She said as much, that we need equity is equal outcomes in the United States, and that's what she wants. So, yeah, to your point on charter schools, she doesn't want people to go to charter schools. She doesn't want people to go to private schools. She wants people to go to public schools so they can all sync together and have equal outcomes. I mean, you got places in California that are canceling honors classes and advanced classes and gifted programs because that would allow some people to have a unequal outcome. Some people could get ahead. There are so many things that could be done. But I got to tell you guys, as long as we are focused on Trump should do or Trump didn't do or why isn't Trump doing, I mean, that's part of the problem is we're dealing with Donald Trump. You got to give him a couple of easy nuggets and tell him as long as you drop these into speech, the rest of it doesn't matter. You make these points over and over and over and over. I want to approach that subject a little bit when we come back because we got all these questioning about the 4D chess and stuff. And I got some thoughts on this that I want to raise with you when we come back. But first, I got to tell you about Vision Computers. Those of you in Sacramento, let me address you over on KSTE, listen in Sacramento right now, because Vision Computer can help you as well, even though they're in Atlanta. Let's say you live in California, your costs are high, or those of you up at WICC in Connecticut, your costs are high. You can't afford the in-house IT guy. You can get a number from Vision Computers that any of your employees can call in 15 seconds or less, get the answer to what ails them with their computer. And so you don't have to have the in-house IT guy. Vision becomes your tech support solution. All you do is call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com and say you need help. $179 a year per computer. Far less than you would pay the salary of the in-house guy. And then your employees get a phone number. They can call. The whole time is less than 15 seconds. They can say, I lost a file. The computer ate my homework. I can't get my email to work. There's something wrong with my printer, and they take care of it for you. And let's say you need a new computer for your office. They can build you a computer, and they'll build you what you want and what you need, not the one-size-fits-all from the big box store. And then that tech support comes for free. So go to visioncomputers.com or 404-COMPUTE. If you call them and tell them I sent you, you're going to save even more money. 404-COMPUTE, visioncomputers.com. Hello there and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. Let me go to the phones here. Glenn, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Anyway, I'm doing fine. Can I give Omaha Steaks a quick commercial for you?
Go for it.
Okay, so I just sent them to my sister, my only remaining sibling. They make a great gift thing, and I love their stuffed potatoes and those apple tartlets. So
yes,
they make a great gift. Someone just gave them to me, and it was fantastic. But anyway, the three points, and I hate this seems trivial after discussion of 9/11, but the dog comment, the Haitian dog comment, I think that was like almost, I don't know if it was on purpose, but it turns out to be like verbal clickbait because people are going to go online, they're going to research, like, what was that? It's shock value. And they're going to see, hey, well, you got this community that's up a third in their population with immigrants. That's overloading their system. They're going to see things like, hey, their car insurance has gone way up. This one guy said, hey, it's as high as car payment. Then the other one was, which I thought was good, it's kind of hidden things, kind of like leftovers that get better after a little time sometimes. Guns. He got Kamala Harris to say, hey, me and Tim are both gun owners, and we're not taking away anybody's guns. Well, that's not going to sit well with her anti-gun crowd. And then the gun owners aren't going to believe it. And then the other one was she gave a pretty strong support of Israel. I think she even said, I'll always give Israel the ability to support itself. Well, that's a negative for Dearborn, Michigan, right? So there were some hidden things. I think they were, he said, you hate Israel. Well, that was shock value. That was verbal clickbait.
Yeah, you're right. Although at the same time, keep in mind with like the environmental stuff, the left knows she's lying about this stuff to get the centrist voters, and they really do believe she's just lying and she's going to stick with them. I don't know, but it is for undecided voters. It does make her seem a little mendacious that she would take multiple positions and fall that way. So, but yeah, we will see if the left cares. This actually raises an issue. J.D. Vance is making a case that the cat memes and the pet memes, that it's not real, but it's forcing the media to focus on an issue they otherwise wouldn't focus on. There is some truth to that, I think, that you make some outlandish claims over and over and over and over and over. What you might be able to do is get the media to say, let's actually look at the issue. And suddenly they're talking about an issue that wasn't on their radar. I don't think you have to lie, though, to do that. If Republicans kept talking about Springfield, Ohio, and the overwhelmed social services and healthcare services and school services and the crime and the geese being eaten is a real thing, without conflating it to the lie of the house pets, the media would still look. And what is happening here is not only are we back to the Trump is playing four-dimensional chess, sort of excuse making, but we're back to where the left was in 2016 and into 2019. The reason Joe Biden won in 2020, the Democratic primary, is because Joe Biden spent way more time focused off Twitter in the real world on real people's issues and connected with real people, while Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and all the others were convinced that if they were getting online momentum or winning the fight online, that they were winning the fight offline. This is real and documented stuff, though. This isn't my opinion. This is the post-mortems of these campaigns as they fell apart, that Democrats said they were so busy talking about stuff that progressives were talking about on Twitter that they weren't talking about stuff people in the real world were talking about. people in the real world are talking about the illegal immigrants coming across the border. They're not talking about the illegal immigrants eating house pets. When you start talking about the house pets, you start missing the ways to talk about it. And I am increasingly convinced that the Republicans are going to wander in the wilderness for a very long time if they don't stop acting like the Democrats were acting from 2016 to 2019, where they were addicted to social media and convinced that social media was real. The only reason, by the way, the Democrats aren't that way now is because Elon Musk bought Twitter and they all got off Twitter and they went to Blue Sky, which nobody uses, so they don't use as much anymore either. The left is not as on social media as the right is right now. The right has taken over social media, and they are obsessed with it. They get their news from it, and they believe it's true. And so much of what they say on social media these days is not true. And you've got accounts like, for example, the End Wokeness account. I follow the End Wokeness account, and I'm shocked by, on a daily, weekly basis, how much comes across that account that's not true. Or Libs of TikTok, who I think is a person who puts points on the board, but more than once in the last couple of weeks has documented things that are not true. You want a good example of this? Take the shooter in Georgia. The school shooter in Georgia. He said he was shooting up the school in part because of people's acceptance of transgenderism. It was taken by that account to mean he's a trans activist shooting up the school because of people not embracing transgenderism. Actually, based on his own statements, words, and context, he was shooting up the school because he thinks too many people are embracing transgenderism. Apparently, he was called gay, bullied and called gay, and people on these social media accounts said, oh, look, proof he's one of those gay activist shooters. No, he was called gay as an insult. He'd only been in that school 2 or 3 days. Kids call each other that these days, whether you like it or not. It doesn't mean he actually was, but that's how it was interpreted. And so you got a host of people out there thinking he's a gay trans activist and shot up the school because of it. And that's not true at all. That's exactly the opposite of it. But people on the right are beginning to believe this stuff. The truth will set you free, but we have bound ourselves to lies online. The left used to do this, and now the right is. I keep coming back to the house pets because it's so indicative of this stuff. There is no evidence that pets are being eaten. I got an email from someone who, in fact, let me find this for you. Let me find you this email so I can read you part of this. Now it appears I deleted it. Basically, a guy was saying he went to a meeting in Dayton, Ohio. Got that? He went to a meeting in Dayton, Ohio, where people from Springfield, Ohio were at the meeting talking about the Haitians, and they were talking about, yes, the Haitians are eating the stray cats in town because somebody's wife's, husband's, mother's, brother's, child's, best friend's postal mail delivery carrier said so. No one's actually seen it. But somebody from somewhere said such and such to such and such who saw it on Facebook, so it must be true. The amount of times I get now from people on the right, not the left, that I saw it on Facebook, it must be true. My daughter actually sent me a screenshot yesterday, a friend sent to her, of something I had said online, and it was photoshopped. It wasn't real. And the friend sent it to my daughter and says, did your dad really say this online? No, I didn't. But it was online. At least the kid knew to send it to my kid and ask. Y'all, I can't emphasize to you enough that if you're not out in the real world talking about the things real people care about, you're losing. And when you're on social media and everybody is on social media talking about one thing and people in the real world are talking about something else, if you're talking about what the people are talking about online, you're going to lose. Ask Kamala Harris, ask Elizabeth Warren, ask Pete Buttigieg. all of whom lost their primaries in 2019, 2020, because they were so obsessed with winning the daily fights of the conversation on social media. And Joe Biden was the one out there talking about COVID and the economy and getting kids back to school. Never mind he lied about it. Never mind he told people he was going to get kids back to school and he didn't. Those are the issues he was talking about, the ones people in the real world were talking about. And now you got a bunch of social media cranks on the right. We now know many of whom are getting their guidance from those who had been subsidized by the Russians. And it's true. It is not in dispute at this moment that many of the loud voices who are directing people's attention on social media from the right are being or were being subsidized by Russians, whether they knew it or not. And they're distracting us. You know what the real world cares about right now? They don't care about Haitians eating pets. They care about overwhelmed social services because of illegal immigrants. They do care about the crime. And they care deeply about the economy. And so when Donald Trump on a debate stage last night spends his time talking about Vladimir Putin defensively and Haitians eating pets, every minute that he's talking about those things, he might be winning the hearts and minds of people on social media, but he's not winning Iowa. He's not winning Pittsburgh. He's not winning Philadelphia. Now, he is going to win Iowa, but not because of that stuff. But he's not winning Madison, Wisconsin. He's not winning Erie, Pennsylvania. He's not winning the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan, when he's talking about cats being eaten. And you can justify it and say, well, it's four-dimensional chess, and by talking about that, it's going to force the media to talk about other stuff. Not really. No, that's not actually the way it works. It sounds very clever. It sounds very clever when people say stuff like that, but that's not really true. You can actually just talk about Springfield, Ohio, and how there are so many Haitians have moved in, they've overwhelmed city resources, and you keep talking about it and asking the media why they're not talking about it, and that's going to force them. You don't have to lie and make it salacious about people eating cats to get them to pay attention. Everybody's trying to justify this self as 4- and 5-dimensional chess. No, it is trying to win the arguments on social media, and social media is not the real world, and we are going to win a campaign in the real world by living in the real world and talking like normal people. Another point, Viktor Orban. Donald Trump last night went off on Viktor Orban. Most Americans have no idea who the hell that is, and those who do probably don't like him, including Donald Trump's fellow Republicans. But Viktor Orban generates priapism for the social media trolls of the right who are subsidized by the Russians. Every single one of them loves him. And so he goes off on Viktor Orban last night. He's not living in the real world. He's living in some freak's head on social media. Get out of it, Donald Trump, if you want to win. And the rest of you, too. If you know the details of Viktor Orban's social policy in Hungary, you are too online and need to delete your accounts. Because most Americans don't care. And they probably find it a little weird that he goes off on some guy from Eastern Europe who nobody cares about, nobody knows anything about. Republicans, you're going to wander a long time in the wilderness if you continue to confuse social media for reality. It is not. It has a place in reality, but it is not a substitute for reality. And too many Republicans are so obsessed with the daily fight on Twitter, they've actually lost touch with what people in the real world care about. And that's going to cost you dearly in elections moving forward unless you get out of that. Now, speaking of the real world, people are actually worried about, for example, inflation and mortgages and what to do with their money and how they might be able to protect themselves as more and more banks go wobbly. That's where Swiss America comes in. They are the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years in this country. They are rated great rating from the Better Business Bureau, and they've been warning people about a war on cash. They're rated A+, no less, by the Better Business Bureau. They've got a report, The Secret War on Cash. You can get it. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. It can save your retirement finances. You get a free copy by calling or texting 800-289-2646. The All-Out War on Cash includes digital forms of currency, and it's growing, it's spreading. So please get and read The Secret War on Cash report completely free. All you do is mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. Get this report for free from Swiss America. Call or text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. Message and data rates may apply. Greetings. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here, 877-973-7425. Craig, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Eric. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, looking forward to. I'm actually going to be part of the group tomorrow night at Bourbon.
Oh,
and Butt,
fantastic!
so looking forward to
Good.
Yeah. And I actually have a cigar for you. You're going to love it.
Nice.
Anyways, an observation and a question that I think you might have some insight on. The observation is I thought it was kind of rich that Kamala Harris spent about an hour and 20 minutes disparaging Donald Trump about past things in the past, and then at the end of the debate said, "Can we just move on?"
Right.
From disparaging, each other and stuff, and talk about the future. So I thought that was kind of rich. The question I have is this, and I think you would have insight into this because you study this every day. Are there really people out there that are so fluid in their political point of view that they actually will go back and forth during an election cycle and say, "Oh gosh, I think I'm leaning towards Trump," and now they watched last night and they go, "I think I'm leaning towards Harris now." I find it hard to believe that.
Sadly, there are. And I know a couple of people like that. And I actually did a study on them when I was running campaigns, helped participate in a study on them. So let me tell you who these people are. There are in this country, believe it or not, people who are very low information voters. They work all day. They got family. They consider themselves above and detached from politics. They don't like politics. They do not engage in the election. And they feel like it's their civic obligation, and they wait until the last minute to really get informed by it. So they listen to music radio. They may watch the local news. They don't watch the national news because it's not in their backyard, so they don't care about it. And they are way more interested in other stuff in life. I actually know a guy. He's not listening right now because he doesn't listen to politics, but I know him, and he, after Trump got shot, emailed me and says he's now 28 years old. He says, "How do I register to vote?" And so I explained to him how to register to vote. And so I saw him about 2 weeks ago, and he said, "So who's running for president?" Now, again, why did he want to register to vote? Trump got shot. So now he's thinking he wants to vote for president. And the question is, who's running for president? I know. I meet these people. I know these people. I have friends like this, and they are completely detached from politics. And the number one reason when I talk to these people why they're detached from politics is the most interesting part of it, because their parents were obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So they themselves, in reaction to their parents' obsession, turned themselves off. So, look, Craig, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night. We can talk more about this. But, yeah, look, I know people like this who they go back and forth. And with women, here's the interesting thing. This is not sexism. This is just the data. With women, it is a more emotional response on the surface. Who do they like? Who cares about them? With men, the surface response is logical and reasonable based on who's actually going to help my family financially, et cetera, et cetera. But underneath it, this is where women are more honest than men. Women wear the emotion of the matter on their sleeves. The men try to gussy it up and make it some rational, reasonable belief. But deep down, it's as emotional for the men as well. And these group of undecided voters are 100% emotional responders. And because the emotions change with the reactions to the candidates, their views of the candidates change as well until the end. That's why you got to close strong in an election and have an emotional appeal to people, because these are the people who will decide the election. If you're scared by that, you should be. God have mercy on all of our souls. These are the people who are deciding the election, but it's true. Now, when we come back, what about the Senate? There's new data out of Montana that has Democrats deeply, deeply concerned they could win the White House and lose the Senate and be blocked from judges, and it's causing Chuck Schumer to try to escalate the confirmation of judges at the federal level, and he's running into roadblocks with the Democrats.